Welcome to Talmudic Treasures. Today we're learning Nedarim, page 9, which discusses that when it comes to someone who is a Nazir, it's necessary because he has refrained from doing certain things. For 30 days, he didn't cut his hair. He also is not allowed to drink wine or consume any grape products or become impure by touching or being in the proximity of a dead body. At the end of that person's Nazirus, there are offerings that are brought, including cutting one's hair and bringing a special offering. Now, in the event that a person would become impure in the process, there is a law that even, let's say it's been 29 days and there's only 1 day left, he has to bring a guilt offering, and the counting starts from scratch. He has to start the 30 days all over again, which in itself becomes quite problematic when it came to the high priest Shimon HaTzadik, who was famous for being in the dreams of the great individual, because that was his name, Alexander the Great, that he always envisioned this great man whenever he was in battle, which is why Alexander the Great and Shimon HaTzadik were able to have some relationship, and he bowed to him, and we call our children Alexander because of that. So this is the same Shimon HaTzadik, and he said, I would never eat from this guilt offering that was brought by this Nazir, because even though when you make this commitment initially, you say, okay, for 30 days, I could handle 30 days. But if you became impure, and then all of a sudden you have to do another 30 days, so that becomes more problematic, and a person may start regretting having made the commitment of being a Nazir. And therefore, this offering was not really necessarily viewed as a sanctified holy offering. So therefore, Shimon HaTzadik would be very careful when it came to him as a Kohen consuming from this particular offering. But there was one time that he made an exception. And we find here a fascinating story, that he saw that there was this young man who was exceedingly beautiful. He was a 10, if you will. And one of the greatest physical attributes that he had is he had beautiful curly locks of hair. So Shimon HaTzadik said, what are you doing? Why are you a Nazir? What's the reason? And of course, Shimon HaTzadik was always quite critical, wondering why someone would do such a thing. So he said, I'll tell you why. I was a shepherd for my father, and as I was tending the flock, I had to go to a well in order to be able to water the sheep, to get water for them. And as I looked down, I was able to see the reflection in the water. And I gazed upon my face and my beautiful flowing hair. And up until that moment, he didn't even realize how beautiful he was. But at that moment, the Talmud says that he said that I was overtaken with a strong desire to sin and to use my beauty in a negative way, to do some of the worst possible things imaginable. And then I stopped for a moment and I said, who are you? And he was speaking to his evil inclination, the desire to do evil. He spoke to himself and said, who are you to do such a thing? God is the one that created you. And even though you're beautiful now, that beauty is temporary. At one day, that beauty is going to fade. So I made a commitment to become a Nazir. And as we said, even though a Nazir keeps their hair long, but eventually as part of the process, they have to shave off all of their hair. And because of that, Shimon HaTzadik said, you are, as the verse says, a Nazir to God. You're clearly an individual that is doing this for the sake of heaven. We see from here so many different amazing thoughts. First of all, this person didn't even realize the beauty that he had until he finally looked upon himself later on in years, which that in itself is unbelievable. But we see that a person could gaze upon themselves and look at their beauty, and they could say, wow, I'm so beautiful, I'm just going to sin. Or you could control yourself, and you can say, I'm not going to allow that to happen. And that is exactly the approach that he took. That even though he had the greatest ability to be able to sin and to do whatever he wanted, he recognized the importance of who God was in comparison to who he was, and therefore he took upon himself this law, being a Nazir, which caused him to cut his hair.